I'm going to have you all turn in your syllabus or your packet to the back to a page that says the introduction speech description. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time to go over exactly what an introduction speech is, and then we'll go into the format of how to organize this introduction speech, and then we'll go through some of the criteria and how your speech day will work. And finally, we'll talk about some of the important elements of delivery that we are going to start practicing in this class right off the bat. A public speaking class is based in really two things: organization and delivery. And when we can make those two components come together in harmony, it is when you really start to see a competent, confident, and clear, well-spoken individual. And that's what we want to get in our back pocket as public speakers this semester. Let's look at the introduction speech. The introduction speech, or an speech of introduction, is designed to allow the audience to get to know you on a more personal level. And that's all we're going to be doing, talking about ourselves, having the audience get to know us. Oftentimes in the real world, if you will, we're asked to introduce ourselves or tell a little bit about it. Let's get some practice in doing so. Many of the different things that you could use or ways that you could talk about who you are. You can include elements like your background information or where you are planning on going to college next, or perchance some careers or hobbies that you potentially want to look into, or maybe that you're already enjoying on weekends. Maybe there was a fun trip you took this past summer that you want to talk about. You can really talk about anything as long as it's going to assist us in getting to know you on a more personal level. Using the information that I talked about, you are going to develop a 2 to 3 minute presentation of introduction about yourself. You're going to use something called an attention getter. You're going to present a clear central idea throughout the speech. You are going to develop main points. You will use transitions to get us from one place to another. And finally, you will end in a conclusion. Now, if none of those words make any sense to you, or you haven't heard them before, don't worry. I will describe all of them in this lecture today. However, how many of you have taken the basic English class?
What's that?
English 21, or maybe the one before it. Anybody ever know how to write a paragraph?
Oh.
Okay, great. So even if you are paragraph writing or if you are essay writing, you already have some good tools in your own back pocket to use to effectively compose this speech. And you may have heard of some of those words before, like a transition or an attention getter, right? Although these ideas are similar to an English class, do not get English class and public speaking confused, or don't make them too similar in alignment. Yes, the organization has huge similarities to it, but public speaking is also very different from a basic writing class as well. And we'll talk about a lot of those differences throughout the semester. This speech is going to be 2 to 3 minutes in length. Amanda, do you want me to talk about myself in 2 to 3 minutes? Do you know how old I am? I have so much experience. I have so much to say. Oh, in public speaking, we are never going to get an endless opportunity to stand in front of somebody and speak for an unlimited amount of time. Thus, we will start to practice on how to narrow our focus and speak only about those things that are the most important to share in that small amount of time. So how can I most effectively, using the information that I have, convey who I am and what I am all about to this class in 2 to 3 minutes? Well, we'll figure out how to narrow that focus down. And that is a continual process that we will go through throughout the semester. You're required to time yourself, and you should time yourself at home. Everybody will have the full 3 minutes to speak in this class. You will get time marker indicators, so I'll give you something like you've hit 2 minutes, and then I'll give you 3 minutes. When you see the 3 minutes sign go up, you will have 30 seconds to wrap it up. After that 30 seconds, I will unfortunately have to clap, and that will be your cue to sit down. If you are only at your first main point and you see this 3 go up, the indicator will be to jump to the end or jump to the conclusion and end your speech and sit down. Does that make sense to y'all? So we want to make sure that we're timing ourselves at home, that we fall within our time parameters, and we allow time for other people to speak, right? Okay, great. Let us go on to the next page, and what you will see here is something called the introduction speech format. The introduction speech format is not only the format for the introduction speech, but will also be the format for every speech thereafter in the class, or hereafter in the class. Make sure that you are understanding this format today. If for some reason you are not understanding this format by the time you leave, you let me know. And this would be a wonderful opportunity for us to chat over the phone or perchance meet for an office hour to ensure that you are understanding what this format is and the requirements of it. Sound good? So that is what we are going to go over first, is this format, how to develop your own speech. You are more than welcome to take notes on this sheet of paper if you would like to, or you can pull out a supplementary piece of paper to go through. Well, we're going to start off with the beginning of a speech. And just like any of you who have ever taken an English class, we will start off with some type of introduction. We need to introduce the speech before we get into it. And how do we do this? Well, we don't come out right away and say, hello everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about snails. How many of you are excited about the speech I am about to give? Nobody. So why don't I come out and say what my speech is about? Because it may not be interesting to who? Me. The audience. You love snails, of course. It's what you want to talk about. And I encourage you all, whether it's snails or whether it's politics, you have a passion and you want to speak about it. But how are we going to make that appeal to the rest of our audience? Well, we'll come up with a lot of different ways to appeal to our audience throughout the semester. But the first way that we can get our audience excited about something like snails is to give what we call an attention, everybody? An attention getter! And that is the first thing that all of you are going to give in this speech, is some type of attention-getting device. And an attention getter, the definition is built into the term itself. It is there to grab your audience's attention. It is something that we develop to make the audience so excited about snails that by the time you get around to saying the speech is about snails, they're like, give me more snails, right? You want to hear all about it. So what types of attention-getting devices do you either know about from your past in public speaking or perchance know about from your past in an English class? What types of things have you heard?
Quotes.
I'm sorry?
Quote.
A quote! Fantastic! Absolutely. Start out with a quote. What else could we start out with?
A story.
I love a story. If you are a good storyteller too, oh, that can go a long way. Fantastic. Tell a story. What else? A joke. Awesome. I love a joke. Most people love a good joke. If you, however, are not a good joke teller, do not tell a joke. Or if you aren't sure that that joke is the ringer, like it always gives a laugh, don't tell it. And I only say that because of the level of apprehension and anxiety that goes in front of an audience. If you're waiting for it to get that huge laugh and it doesn't come, it can sometimes create more anxiety within us. The other thing it does is it can make who feel uncomfortable? Yeah, have you ever been to a comedy show and somebody's bombing and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't look at it, right? The audience usually feels more uncomfortable than the person on stage. They're used to it. So really be sure that your joke is the best joke ever. Not ever. You know what I mean. What else can we do? Yes? An interesting question. Fantastic. How many of you have ever started a paper off with a question? Okay. Many of us. Who's there to answer the question?
Us.
In a paper, who's there to answer the question?
The writer.
The writer?
The reader.
The reader. Do you ever see them?
No.
Interesting, right? So what type of question is this?
Rhetorical.
Ah, a sneaky rhetorical question. Let's put that right there. We'll hold on to it.
Okay.
In this class, where's your audience? In front of you. So, essentially, we could get our audience to what if we ask a question? Answer or respond to us. So there are two different types of questions that we can use to start off our speech. Let's look at those. Question. We can use the first, which we talked about, which is a rhetorical question. And so what does the word rhetorical mean? How many of you have heard the term rhetorical question? All of us. Yet none of us know what it means. Yes. Okay, it kind of gives it away. It's something that's already answered in the question. By definition, a rhetorical question, because you are right on the mark, is a question that doesn't demand an answer. Yet, at the same time, rhetoric, as my last class just learned, is the art, if you will, of persuasion. What? Was this persuasive? Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a class where somebody comes in late and the teacher says, do you know what time this class starts? By show of hands, anybody? Yes. Does the teacher want that person to answer?
No.
No. They know it started at 9:30. But what does that person now know through the answering of a question? Don't come late. And what does everybody else in the audience now know? Don't come late. Right? Based upon my audience and what we know about in the Western United States, what we know about rules of a classroom, what we know about our values in accordance with things like time, what we know about how to make people feel bad or guilty or shame you into doing something, this rhetorical question can create an understanding with everyone without having to say, you need to be here on time, that you need to be here on time. And that's why it's an artful tool of persuasion, these rhetorical questions. So what they do, or they draw the audience to the answer that we already know based upon a system of values or cultural beliefs or ideals that are already embedded within us. So that even if we don't all come to the same thing or the same exact idea, i.e. I need to be there on time, or I don't want to be made fun of, so I'm going to go, or oh, I don't want to miss out on whatever's going to happen in class, these are all parts. Hi. Good. Are you enrolled in this class?
I'm not.
We are already. I'm so sorry.
I think I emailed you. Another thing is actually it was at the wrong campus. Can I talk to you after class?
Yeah. Why don't you, you can? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Grab a syllabus. We'll cut that part. It's a rhetorical question. You got it. You get it? All right, here's the other way. You can also ask something called a direct question. It's a crazy idea that we're directly asking you, right? Because our audience is there in front of us, and we can have them participate with us if they would like to. So if you want your audience to participate and you want them to give you an answer that you can then build upon, well, there is your question that you can ask. But the key with a rhetorical question as well as a direct question is it takes a lot of responsibility upon the speaker to make sure that it is going to go the way you want it to go. For example, how many of you have brothers and sisters? Okay, so about 20 of us. Anybody have brothers and sisters that didn't raise their hand? Okay, why didn't any of you raise your hand? I did ask you a question, but why did you raise your hand? I didn't ask you to do so. It's interesting because we have these weird social norms, right, in school that we're used to replying to a speaker. We're in a classroom, so the values and norms when we walk through the door, we already have it categorized that if a teacher asks us a question, we raise our hand. But when you're going out and speaking in an environment when everybody isn't used to maybe being in a classroom, and you say, how many of you have brothers and sisters? We know socially also that when somebody's up in front of the audience, you don't what? Interrupt them. So when somebody asks you a question, you can oftentimes get a lot of this. And people don't know exactly what to do. So if we are asking a rhetorical question, or if we're asking a direct question, we need to be clear in what we want our audience to do. So like the direct question, if I do want a response, I can say something like, how many of you have brothers and sisters? And now what do you know to do? Raise your hand because I've done it. However, we have to remember that our audience needs access. Those are the individuals who may not be able to see and can only hear. We can reinforce our visual representation of hands being raised with a a add-on of by a show of hands. This also works for individuals who may be taking notes already, or if you're in an environment where it's an office and people are allowed to maybe be on their phone while you're giving a presentation, you can say those things for people who are looking down. And now they know that they are to participate. If you are asking a rhetorical question, it is very important that you remind your audience that this is something instead that they need to think about or consider this or take a moment and think quietly. Because if I say, how many of you have been to Disneyland, you cannot guarantee that there's not going to be that one person in the back who's like, oh my gosh, I love Disneyland. The parts that I love the most are Pirates of the Caribbean, and then I love to go get... And then by the time you know it, 5 minutes is up, and they have steamrolled the entire conversation. So if we prompt them with what you want them to do, it can help not only keep your speech on track of exactly where you want to be going, but also prevent any uncomfortable situations for the audience as well. Does that make sense to you? So if we're asking a rhetorical question, what are some of the things we can say? That would be something that we wanted them to participate with, like a direct question. Consider this. Take a moment and think quietly to yourself about this idea, right? I'm going to answer this question, but right now, take a second and think. When I say the words, right? And then you can begin with any of those statements. If you want them to participate, ask for a show of hands. Ask for them to say, ooh, ooh, ooh. Ask for them whatever you want them to do. But if somebody does participate and you're asking a direct question, everybody raises their hands, what should you do? Acknowledge that hand raise. There's nothing worse than everybody raising their hands and then the person moving right on and being like, well, what was the point of me being here? Why did I raise my hand? For what purpose? So we acknowledge, oh, about 20 of us. Looks like 10 of us don't have brothers and sisters. Interesting. I, too, am an only child. Right? And then we can acknowledge what our audience and what we're seeing. Because not everybody's going to look around as well and see what's going on in their room, in whatever environment they're in. You can use these attention getters to start. You can always develop any other type of attention-getting device you want. I've seen people sing. I've seen people come in and dance. You can do anything you want. We will develop this as time goes on in the class. I will give you numerous other attention-getting devices to draw your audience in. But for the purpose of this speech, telling a quote, or perchance a story, or a joke, or asking an interesting question, maybe even using a fun statistic or fact, can all be very effective ways to gain your audience's attention and interest. Sound good? Anybody have any questions about this part, the attention getter? All right, there are two other parts to your introduction, so let's get on to those. After we have established the attention getter, the next part that you are going to do is reveal your topic. The reveal topic portion of the speech will always be there. Whether it is your informative speech or your persuasive speech or this speech, it is the second thing you do. Never tell us your topic before you give the attention getter. It's like telling the punchline before you give the joke. you can lose audience members who aren't interested. So gain their attention and then give them what this is about. So what is this speech about? If you go back to that first page of the prompt, it's going to tell you, what do you want the audience to do? Get to know you. Absolutely. This speech is about who? You. And when you introduce yourself to somebody, you go up and you say, hi, I'm from Hawthorne. Oh, great. Why is that weird? When have you ever just said, hi, my favorite color is yellow? What do you not know? Your name. When you introduce yourself, you know your name. So this is the perfect portion of the speech for you to tell us who you are. So in the reveal topic portion, you're not only going to tell the topic, which in this case is you, so let us know your name. I can't tell you how many speeches I go through and I never hear somebody's name. But the other purpose of the reveal topic portion of a speech, which you may not need to do extensively in this speech, is for you to give us any type of, and I'm going to put a BG here for background information. And the other thing that it may be effective in doing is laying out any terminology or jargon that you may be using that the audience may not be privy to. So let's first talk about this background information. The background information is, or the purpose of it, is for letting the audience know any information that they may need to know before you get to the body of the speech, but they may not have full information on. How many of you watch television? Okay. How many of you have ever watched television? Okay, I like that we're like all like, no, I don't watch TV. Okay, but if you've ever watched a TV show in your life, you've seen something of what I'm going to talk about. Before a TV show, it says something like, previously on Mistresses. Go with that. The summer hit. Why do they do it previously? To remind you of what? What's been happening. Everything in the last 3 seasons they're going to remind you of? It's going to be a long previously on. The episode before? The most important things from what? The episodes before, so that you can understand the episode now. Absolutely. So it may be a throwback to season 1. You're like, oh man, I forgot that happened. But they clearly want you to know that happened so that when it brings it back up in this episode, you're like, oh, I see what's going to happen today. Same thing happens in our class or in any speech. We need to give you that background information because if you just start watching Mistresses halfway through and are like, I'm going to watch this, and you turn it on one day, you're probably going to be what? Lost. And then you're going to do what? Change the channel, not watch it. You do not want your friends to change the channel and not watch you. So the important part is that you get in this background information if there's anything that we need to know before you get to the bottom of the speech or the body of the speech. In your case, for the introduction speech, we don't know anything about you. So this isn't where you're going to put everything. But if you aren't going to talk about some highlights of you, things like maybe your major or your age or where you're from in the body of the speech, this would be a great place to put it. So I can say something simple like, my name's Amanda, I'm 19 years old, I'm a 3rd year here at Santa Monica College, and someday I want to transfer to USC. I'm not going to talk about any of that information in the body of my speech, but it was an easy overview for you to understand. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing is technical jargon or maybe terminology that your audience may not be privy to. So we never know who we're speaking to in our audience and what kind of background and knowledge they have. Each of us are going to be experts on whatever we're speaking about. So we may know or understand jargon or information or language that makes more sense to us. What I encourage you to do is lay that out at the front. So for example, if I'm doing a speech on drunk driving, I could say something like, today I'm going to be referring to the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but I will be saying MAD. Today I'm going to be talking about human papillomavirus, but I will be referring to it as HPV. So that the first time that terminology comes up, it won't be something that our audience is confused by. They heard what that is at the beginning. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so we have our attention getter, we have our reveal topic. Now I'm going to give you the third part of this introduction. Oh, you know what? I'll just erase that. Hold on. Here we go. I'm going to give you the third part of the introduction, which is something that usually freaks people out. But do not let this word scare you. It is different than English. Okay, this is one of those things that is completely different from English. Okay, I'm going to have you write what we call a thesis. It's the last sentence before you go into the body of your speech. Or it's the last sentence of the introduction, always. What is a thesis? Well, in public speaking, it's a combination of the central idea and the main points. The central idea is what your speech is about. In this case, it's written right there in the prompt. For who to get to know what? Me. Yeah, to get to know you better, right? That is the purpose of this speech. The central idea, what this speech is about, getting to know you. And the main points are how we will talk about what this speech is about. So the how plus the what equals your thesis. I'm going to write one out for you. You can use it if you would like, but it is as simple as in order for you to get to know me better. Then we put in the hows. How in the world are we going to get to know you better? What types of things do you think that we would want to hear about? Flip it back over to that first page. I've given you some ideas. These elements of your background information, or perchance where you come from, or what your hobbies are, what your job is, or what your career goals are. These are all great ways to get to know you. You do not have to use any of those main points if those don't help us get to know you at all. So you choose things that help us get to know you. What makes you you? So you can choose those things. So I could say something like, in order for you to get to know me better, I will describe my family, my job, and my hobbies. These main points are how I'm going to help you get to know me better. A simple thesis statement. In order for you to get to know me better, I will describe my family, my job, and my hobbies. So what's the central idea? Great. In order for you to get to know me better, everybody say it with enthusiasm, because that is right. In order for you to get to know me better. And what are my main points?
Family, job, and hobbies.
Fantastic. I came up with 3. And how did I come up with 3? Well, 1, we all love the power of 3, because you've learned that probably from English class as well. But in public speaking, there's something called balance. And we need to make sure that there's a balance of our speech. There is a couple different standards that we look at. If this is our introduction, and this is our conclusion, our introduction for a 2 to 3 minute speech, or any introduction at all, is going to be about 30 seconds long. This will build out as your speech builds out in time, but for the purpose of this one, we're going to give ourselves about 30 seconds. Your conclusion is going to be between 20 and 30 seconds. So if I have 2 to 3 minutes to speak, how long do I have to concentrate on the body if I've already taken up 30 and 30? I have 2 minutes, right? So I have 2 minutes to speak. How many main points should I have in this area? Well, it is suggested that you have between 2 to 3 main points for a 2 to 3 minute speech. If you do any more than that, you are not going to be able to go into the kind of detail that would be required for us to truly get to know you better. So however many you think, if you think that you want to spend 1 minute on one main point and 1 minute on another main point because you'd like to dedicate a little bit more time, or you can divide it by 3, whatever works for your timing. We say balance because unlike an English class, you know when you write that crappy paragraph and you shove it somewhere in the middle that you hope nobody pays attention to? Okay, some of us are laughing, like, yeah, I know. Because I used to do that too. Like, this one stinks, I'm going to throw it in the middle. Nobody will ever notice it. In public speaking, what will we do? Yeah, we're going to notice it because we're all going to hear it, and it'll be like, that was an awkward main point. If it doesn't have enough detail, if it doesn't have enough description, drop it and only use those 2 main points. Sound good? All right. So our main points are these 3, and that's what we have decided on. The family, job, and hobbies. What else is different about this statement from something that you would hear in English class? Yes?
In English, they don't really want you to flat out say all your points.
They don't want you to flat out say all your points for a thesis, right? It's more of this like obscure idea. Not obscure idea, but it's just more of a statement.
They don't want you to explain what you're going to go into in your introduction to this party.
Mm-hmm. What else is interesting here? What else is different? What would they never want you to put in there? Okay, what you'll talk about. Good. Where are we at? Who's that? Yes, okay, right? You, me, I. But in public speaking, if I was not writing in this or speaking to you in first person, would it sound weird? If I was trying to have an everyday conversation with you? Yes. One would talk about how to get to know another individual by maybe describing things such as, right? It doesn't make any sense. It sounds weird. And you're right there in front of me. So use that personal first person language. I, you, me, it all goes in this way. It also makes us feel like what? You're talking to who? The audience. You're talking directly to me. Thanks for including me. I feel appreciated. We want to make sure that we include that. In regards to this as well, people are like, Amanda, well, I would never say in order for you to get to know me better. It's not in my typical slang. It's not my jargon. That's fine. You can say it however you want. So you can understand a bit more about who I am. To get to know me better, right? You can say it however you want to, but the concept of that the purpose is for us to get to know you should be there. Does that make sense? So you can literally copy this word for word if you want to, or you can create your own, maybe stylistic, your own personal stylized thesis. Always. Now that you understand this idea of a central idea, let's go back to our attention getter. The central idea is what this speech is about. It is the reason, and I will say this 1,000,001 times, that you open your mouth. You get up here for one reason, and that is for this reason. When you choose examples, when you choose visual aids, when you choose an attention getter, when you choose statistics, when you choose facts, they should all be about your central idea. If it does not fulfill that quality or that characteristic, it probably doesn't belong. We want to be, again, the most competent and clear individuals that we can up here. And so making everything relate to the central idea is going to be a key focus of yours for the future. That being said, we can go back to something like our attention getter. If I'm going to tell a quote, it should be about who? Yeah, you. If I'm going to tell a story, it better be a story about you. If there's a joke, it should involve If I'm going to ask a question or tell a statistic or fact, what should it revolve around? One more time, everybody. Yes, it should revolve around you. So make sure that it's relating in some way or shape or form. I can ask a question like, by show of hands, how many of you are thrill seekers? All right, 2 other people in this class are thrill seekers. My name is Amanda, and today I'm going to talk about my family, my job, and my dog. What got weird here? What are you wondering?
What does that have to do with this?
What does that have to do with thrill seeking? I cannot tell you how many times people start off with an attention getter that has nothing to do or is not connected, or they don't explain how it relates to them. So not only should it relate to them, but you must make the connection between the attention getter and the reveal topic about what that has to do with you. So if I said something like, again, by a show of hands, how many of you are thrill seekers? Oh, maybe now enough. Oh, 4 of us in this class? 5? Okay, fantastic. I too am a thrill seeker, maybe not in the traditional way that you will think. But for now, let me tell you this. My name's Amanda, and I'm 19 years old. I go to Santa Monica College, and I'm majoring in communication studies. Today, I'm going to help you understand a little bit more about me by describing my family, my job, and how I love thrill-seeking through the art of eating new food. Does that make sense to you all? So I have told you where it fits in. I've had students do many different things before. For example, somebody told a limerick at the beginning, and they were like, there's 6 people in my family. I have blank, 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 and blank, but there was only 5. And she was like, well, if you have to figure out this limerick, I'll tell you a little bit about it at the end and tell you where that other family member goes. And so in her conclusion, what did she do? She tied it up with that she was pregnant. And that was where her 6th one. I know, and that's what we all did too. Like, yes, this is such a great one, right? So you can say something like, I'm going to get around to that part later, but we'll go on, and let me tell you this first. Okay, so just make sure that you're making these connections. Does everybody understand the introduction? Do you think that you can put together your attention getter, your reveal of topic, and your thesis statement without fear, hesitation, nervousness? Awesome. Okay, great. I am going to erase this, and what we'll do is we'll move around or move along to the next part. What is the next part? Well, it is something called a transition. If you see on your papers, you will have a transition fall before every single main point that you give. A transition, by definition, is a sentence or a statement that moves your audience from one idea to the next. Your audience does not have a piece of paper in front of them that they are reading like an English class. What they demand of a speaker is for you to keep them on track with your speaking. And so we use transitions to let them know where we've been and where we're going, or that an idea has ended, and then we're moving on. There's nothing worse than an audience member sitting there and being like, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about something else. What's this idea about, right? These transitions will help keep them on track and keep them moving. The other good thing about a transition in a speech is that if you do have an environment that allows for somebody to walk in the midst of your presentation, these transitions can serve as a tool to get them back on track and figure out what exactly you're talking about and what this is in relation to. Does that make sense to you? It may make a little bit more sense once we describe what these transitions are. Let me go ahead and write about them here. Each transition, for the purpose of these first couple speeches, is going to have 3 parts to it. The first thing that each transition is going to have is something that we call a signpost. Anybody out there drive? Yes. What types of signposts did you see on the way to school? Stop sign, or a yield, or pedestrian. These stop signs are there so that the driver knows what is going to come up. If we didn't have that there was a yield, what's going to happen? The driver's just going to go about their merry way, and so is the other person, and then there could be a big what? Accident. Same thing could happen in your speech. If we don't give this signpost, the audience doesn't know what's coming next, or they don't know that we've switched ideas, or they don't know that we're turning into that lane. Thus, we need to give something like a signpost. These are words or phrases that allow the audience to know that we're switching ideas. You may know them as something called first, second, oh my goodness, third. We can also do something like to begin, next, moving on, finally. This indicates to the audience that something is changing or switching. Does that make sense to y'all? Once we give that signpost, the other thing that we need in our main or in our transition is a main point. And the final thing that we need is something called the central idea. It is going to have a combination of these three different things. So you want to combine the main point, or sorry, the transition, with the main point, and then the central idea. So it not only tells us what we're going to be focusing on next, but it reminds us what the purpose of this whole speech is to begin with. So it would sound something like, if I was going into my first main point, which is my, read it on the board, what's my first main point? Great, it's my family. So now give me the transition. Are you ready? Here we go. You can say something like, so use the three parts together.
First,
In a sentence?
I will describe my family first.
And then? Why would you talk about your family? So that we can?
We'll get to know me better.
Yes! Good job! All right, let's move on. Let's go to that second one. You ready?
Then I will talk about my job.
Okay. Is that a complete sentence?
So that you can get to know me better.
Good. But then I will talk about my job. I wouldn't start out with it like that. If we've already used the word first,
Next.
second, give it.
I will talk about my job.
Why?
So that you can get to know me
It's all happening. Now we used first and second. It would be weird if we used finally. Like Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. We do not want that to happen. We want it to keep consistent. So if we're doing our transition, if you look on your paper, going into your third main point, what do you think you would say? Give it to me. Ready?
Third.
I will talk about...
my hobbies.
Stop it.
So you can get to know me
Yes, absolutely. Let's give these three a round of applause. Nailed it. These transitions can be just this simple. Again, you can start out with to begin. I'll talk about my family so you can get to know me better. So you can get to know me better. I will next talk about my job. Did you see how they switch up? As long as we're getting these 3 points in there, you can explore how you feel most familiar or comfortable with saying it. There's something also that we call a review preview. This helps in speeches to remind our audience or review what we just talked about and then preview what we're going to talk about next. Now that I told you about my family, I'd next like to describe my job so that you can get to know me better. Yeah? And that's the review preview. Do each of you think that you can write your own transitions? Where are you going to put them? Look on your paper. Where do those go? Before every single main point, right? That's why it has a main point in it. It's introducing that main point. It's very good. Yes?
better. What do you have to say so you can get to know me better after each one?
You can start it with so you can get to know me better, or let's get to know me better a little bit more by talking about my job. Or I guess we need a signpost. Next, let's get to know me better by talking about my job, however you feel most comfortable. So mix and match it. Good question. Anybody else? Okay. Yes?
So for your transitions, you don't have to put all your new points in the signpost?
No, because the only reason that you would be doing a transition is to move you to the next point. Are you talking about a review preview?
No, when you explained it, I got confused.
Sure.
I thought that sounded kind of redundant to keep listing all your transitions.
Right, you do not have to list them in all your transitions. So for me, it would be first, I'll tell you about my family so you can get to know me better. I've talked about my family, let me next tell you about my job so you can understand who I am. Finally, we talked about my job and my family. Let's get into my last main point of my hobbies so you can really understand who I am. Does that make sense? Okay. And so each of those sentences would be right before I go into my main bodies. Paragraph.
Are we allowed to have like a note card?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk about that sooner than later. Let's get into the body of the speech, shall we, everybody? All right. The body of your speech is going to be the breadth and depth. So each of you have these main points. So for our first main point, you know that I'm going to talk about what based upon my thesis statement? Me. And the transition. Yes, you, but how are we going to know about you? Through talking about that main point, which is your family. Absolutely.
Oh.
So it says there on the sheet, description or example of the main point, and then relate that main point back to your central idea. Amanda, what does any of that mean? Well, let me put it into lay terms for you. If I have this first main point, and I am going to describe my family, I'm going to choose a couple of maybe family members for you to know about. For me, I'm going to tell you about my mom, and then I'm going to tell you about my dad. This is who I want to tell you about for my family. So I could say something simple like, my mom, her name is, first, let me use the transition so you can get to know me. I'm going to tell you about my family. There are two members of my family that I'd like to focus on. That's both my mom and my dad. First, I'll tell you about my mom. Her name is Judy. Judy works for a nonprofit organization that puts after-school programs back into LAUSD schools where curriculum has gotten cut. Things like math or science, well, not science, nobody's cutting like that, but things like art, things like physical education, things like special languages or perchance music. This is something that she loves to do. My dad is a retired police officer. He now is a project manager and he works on different houses. What have you not gotten to know?
Your son. I got to know your parents.
My parents, yeah, right? But what does that have to do with
You.
me? People do this and make this mistake all the time. I'm going to tell you about my love for hip-hop. I love hip-hop music. It's awesome. I listen to it all day long. Great. What does that have to do with you? Why do you love hip-hop? What speaks to you? What moves you? How does it live in your soul? How is it the essence? I love snowboarding and surfing and skateboarding. That's cool. So does 98% of the rest of your age group. But what does that have to do with you? Your job is going to be to describe that. So if I went back and said something like, I'll first describe my mom. And I said, my mom works for a nonprofit that puts programs back into LAUSD schools. Before my mom worked there, she worked at Habitat for Humanity. If you haven't noticed, my mom loves to give back. She has instilled within me through each of her jobs and by the work that she constantly does to always give back to others and to provide where I can, whether it be monetarily, assistance, or even in the providing of knowledge through teaching. These are all ways that we can help each other, and this is something that my mom's constantly always told me. My dad also, his name is Jack. He's awesome. He was a police officer. A lot of people in today's day and age have a negative idea of what a police officer is. My dad retired back in 1995, but this man is one of the most loving and caring individuals. If you asked him why he was a policeman, it was so that he could help other people. He loved going to his job, and he loved to be able to assist others, and he built that into me as well. So both of my parents have always taught me to give back in whatever way that I can and show others that same kind of gratitude that they've shown the world around them. And hopefully that helped you know me a little bit more through my parents. Now I'd like to move on to my hobbies. Does that make sense? So I've tied it in and I've made sense of what that means to each of you, or to you in relation to. Wait, I've made sense to my audience of how my main points relates to getting to know me better. You will go through this all the time. You do this in persuasion as well. Somebody gives a statistic and then they just let it sit there. It's like, what does that statistic have to do with anything? Oh yeah, I'm telling you it so that you'll go out and drink more water. But we forget to tell our audience that, and it's like, oh, okay. So we want to make sure that it relates to us. You can do this with each of your main points. If you don't have two descriptions or examples, like a mom and a dad, you just want to talk about one person, that's fine. That's how you chose to do it. But make sure that you are always relating and describing back to who you are. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. Do you think you can build out your own main points?
Yes.
The last thing I want you to do is to build into the conclusion. This is where we are going to wrap it up. And it's the 20 seconds to 30 seconds. And if people think, oh, that's so short. No, in English class, yeah, they like you to go on and like build on the idea and what's going to happen. In public speaking, if you say in conclusion and you don't wrap it up, the whole audience is like, what in the... It's like when your teacher's like, we're almost done. And then 30 minutes later, you're like, we're almost done. Nobody's listening. They're just thinking, why isn't this ending? So get to the end. There's 3 things you need to do. 1, give us a signpost. A signpost for conclusion can be something as simple as, to conclude, in conclusion, in summary, I'm going to wrap this speech up by, right? You can say anything you want to let us know that you're drawing. The second thing you are going to do is repeat the thesis. Again, Amanda? Well, yes, friends, that's right. It may seem crazy in a 2 to 3 minute speech, but when you get into doing like your 7 to 10 minute speeches, people will be like, oh yeah, I forgot you talked about that. So we get in the habit now. So we'll repeat our thesis. And then the last thing that you are going to do is relate back to the attention getter. We like to wrap everything up in a nice little bow and a package and tidy it all up. So where did we start this presentation to with where are we ending it? So something like, to conclude today, I've told you a little bit about my family, my job, and some of my hobbies, all in hopes that you got to know me better. The next time that somebody talks to you about thrill-seeking, don't be so scared and think that it has to be jumping out of a plane or perchance base jumping off of a mountain. Instead, it can be something as simple as taking a step outside of your comfort zone, trying a new food, or even maybe participating in a public speaking class. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so does that make sense how we tied it up? What do we now know at the end of the speech that we didn't know at the beginning of the speech? And that's how we can tie these things together. This is the organizational pattern that you are going to use for every speech here on after. This is clear. It may sound redundant in parts, but if you start to feel like it sounds redundant in order for you to get to know me better, switch that language up, move some things around, just make sure that the components are there. Does anybody have any questions about the structure before I move on to the delivery of this speech? You are allowed to have one piece of paper, front and back, up with you of the ideas that you want to say. In this class, we deliver speeches extemporaneously. You can look to the syllabus to see what that means. Essentially, it means being fully prepared, but delivering from a brief set of notes. Oh, did you have a question about the structure?
Can we include a call to action?
Well, this speech isn't a persuasive speech, so in essence, a call to action wouldn't make much sense in the speech unless you made, for some reason, your introduction about going out and doing something. Then we could do something like a call to action. My call to action is in like trying something new. You know, it can be as simple as trying something new or taking a public speaking class. It's not necessarily telling them to go out and do it. So if your intention getter wanted to establish that there was like service or something that you should always be doing and that's what you base your life upon and that each of your main points you built that back in, then it may work at the end, but typically just for a persuasive speech is a call to action. And when she means a call to action, that means getting you up to do something. So now I want you each to pull out your wallet. You're going to pull out $1. You're going to put that $1 in this bucket and you are going to praise Amanda for the gift of speech that I gave you. I don't know, something like that. And we are going to donate that dollar. All right. That being said, what I want each of you to do is go home and write this speech out in full. But once you write it out in full, what you need to do is then take that full speech and transfer it to another piece of paper that only has keywords and phrases on it. If you have every single thing that you intend to say up with you, you will read that speech and or you will memorize that speech. Practice only with the keywords and phrases. There is no reason for any of us to be, my name is Amanda Whidden, and I live in Hoffman. No. So if we put key things like, where are you from? I can talk to you about where I am from. So one page with keywords and phrases that's going to jog your memory as to what you're talking about. Practice only with that one piece of paper. It may sound different every time. Good. That's how conversations are. You don't tell a joke doing it the exact same way every time, right? You tell it differently. That being said, how many times should I practice, Amanda? I say you practice 5 times out loud. There is nothing worse than coming into a classroom where you're already feeling a little bit of anxiety. And then what happens? We hear our voice for the first time. Who's that? You ever heard yourself on an answering machine or a recording? You're like, what? That's what I sound like? And then it's billowing in your ears. So say it out loud and get used to hearing yourself. Practice 5 times out loud. Does that make sense? Let's talk about some areas of delivery. I'm going to make this one a bit quick. But what you will have for this first speech is the podium. The podium's job is to put things on. The podium's job is not to do this on.
I'm going to do this, huh? This communicates something. What is it?
You're not interested.
I'm not interested. I'm bored. I'm pretty lazy, right?
We want to communicate different things to our audience depending on what the content of our speech is. And in this case, you're presenting yourself. So you walk in with a little bit of confidence, okay? And what does confidence look like? Well, it's very simple. I can walk in like this, put my shoulders back, hold my head up, and all of a sudden everybody thinks I know what I'm talking about when I have no clue. But it looks like I do. So we will use our podium for that. If you do want to use your hands and put them on the podium, as I say for the death grip, you can, but I would encourage you to put them on the side. If you put them in the front, it will make it easy for you to do this. If you put them on the side, this feels weird. So it's a helpful tip, if you will. What do we do with our hands? Well, typically we use them as an extension of our ideas. However, if individuals don't have working hands, that is something that obviously us as an audience have to adjust to. They can keep hands down. If you have working arms and hands, you should use your hands as an extension of a gesture. You would never tell a story and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, you're never going to believe what happened today. So I was walking down the street, and right? You're like, why isn't she moving her hands? We do it. So somehow we get in front of our audience and forget what to do. You can try to use them naturally as an extension of what you were saying. But if you haven't used them naturally in this way, there are a couple different things that you can do to try to build in that hand work. First, you can use your hands to enumerate. First, I'll tell you about my job. Second, my family. Third, my hobbies. And I put it back down. Does that make sense? So to enumerate. The other thing that it can do is be used to show size. He was this wide. She was this tall. Fries were this big. And the last thing that you can do is you can use it to get your audience's attention. I wouldn't have believed it. Not to death grip. Okay? So you can do all of these different things. With our body, we want to make sure that we are grounded. Watch ourselves from moving back and forth and back and forth. It's the reason that we don't just walk and give our speech. Right now, what do you all feel? Lost. Who walks like this when they give a speech? What? Who walks like this? People who are nervous. Or people who are trying to get you to
to work out.
Because there's energy, pumped up, right? Like a motivational speaker will do this, or a pastor will sometimes do this. If they are like really evangelical, we'll go out there and we'll use our whole body. But otherwise, walking back and forth has no purpose other than it becoming a distraction. So instead, let's ground ourselves. And throughout the course of the semester, I'm going to talk to you about how to walk effectively. The other thing that we want to do is make eye contact with our audience. It is very difficult for people to do that, but I know exactly where you're looking when you do this. Where are you looking? At the back. And now where am I looking? At the ceiling. Exactly. So our audience, because of our Western society that we are in, looking at somebody means that we are giving them respect, that we are including them. These are all the things that eye contact communicates. So our idea is that we want to scroll the audience while we're talking, but that may be difficult for some people. So you can take one person and deliver that sentence. Look down, get your idea. Take this person and deliver the next sentence. I'll look at my paper. Take this person and deliver the next sentence. Then I'll go to the next person. That's a helpful hint if that's something that you're uncomfortable with. If you are a tall individual, having your piece of paper here becomes sometimes an issue. I would encourage all of you to take one step back from the podium because that will allow your gaze to be here without having to do this and seem like you're reading so much. Does that make sense to you? So we talked about our posture, our gestures, our eye contact. The last thing I want to tell you are the ideas about filler words. These are things like like, you know, so, and when used as punctuation, gonna, wanna, just, etc. I can tell you exactly when these words are going to come into your speech. It is when you look down at your paper to get your next idea. It is something that people do all the time when they switch ideas because they're scared of this crazy thing called silence. We get on this treadmill and we think we need to just keep going. I get on my way, I gotta keep going. But instead, we can mix up our pattern of speech. If I need to take a second, I can, and look down. So I encourage you all that what you need to do is practice in front of another person. If you state one of these words, have that person stop you, and then start your speech over again. By the time you get to being stopped, probably time 3, you will start to do this crazy thing, which is called thinking before you speak. And I guarantee you it will help to reduce the use of this language. Those are for the ums, uhs, and likes. These are filler words. You know is typically at the end of a sentence, to which I say, no, I don't know. So use your words to describe what you are saying. It is simply a filler. So and are used as commas. I can't tell you how many speeches I have that have no punctuation at all. It is just one huge paragraph, so we want to avoid those. Gonna and wanna make you sound uneducated, my friends. Gonna is what? Going to. Wanna is want to. Today I'm going to tell you about my family, my friends, and my job. That's where you're going to do it. Today I'm going to tell you about my friends, my family, and my job. Okay? These are things that we will practice throughout the course of the semester, but I guarantee you that if you are willing to put in the effort and work on this, I will help you out and we will get this done. How will speech day work? You're going to come in to class next or this Thursday. Everybody is going to bring with you what it says in the back of this packet, which is 1, a 2 to 3 minute speech of introduction. A 1-page keyword outline of your speech. That's for yourself. You do not have to turn anything into me. You do not have to turn anything into me. A positive can-do attitude, because you can. And finally, your introduction speech evaluation sheet, which falls here. When you come into class, there will be numbers listed on the board. It will be, in this case, 1 through 30. You will sign up in the order that you would like to go. You will go ahead and put your name next to the number that you were signing up, and then you will put the number that you signed up next to it. So I would put a 3 here. Then I will rip this piece of paper out, and I will put it on the desk in numerical order. That means that when 9:30 comes, we will start immediately. We will be ready to go, and everybody will be sat down. Does that make sense to you how you'll sign up? All right. If you have communication apprehension or anxiety, you are going to want to come in, sign up in the first 5 spots. Do not let time go by for you to get that kind of anxiousness and not come back to this class. Sound good? Any questions at all about this speech, the delivery elements that we're going to need to look at, how the speech day will go? Thank you. Yes?
Oh, if we choose to be number one, will you get your credit?
No. That's your own moral victory. All right, everyone. Have a great day. If you are